Hello, this is Gabe Larson with InsideSales.com. We're ready to rock and roll here. Excited to talk to you about 3 strategies for optimizing your sales stack and accelerating sales in 2016. I can't believe it. 2015 is come and gone, and we're ready to start thinking about 2016. So we got a handful of people in. As we wait for a couple of the stragglers, we're going to go ahead and play just a quick video, and then we're going to get started.
Hi, I'm Kemp Recoja with Aptus Corporation. I'm the Chief Customer Officer, and I didn't know about inside sales until I went to their show, their Momentum show in March, and I looked at all the applications that they had, and I was blown away with what they could potentially do for our organization. I'm looking for ways that I can increase our sales, increase our productivity of our sales team, and we decided to buy all of their products based after a thorough evaluation of all the tools in the marketplace. We came up with a pretty compelling business value assessment where we project getting around 20 to 30% increase in overall sales utilizing the tool. We purchased the end of June, and I worked with the team at Inside Sales of what I was looking for timelines, looking for engagement, looking for expertise as far as business practices. I mean, one of the things that I really liked about Inside Sales is they brought a lot of expertise to us, because I'm concerned with the outcome. I'm concerned about increasing sales and productivity. And Inside Sales came in and worked with us to refine and implement a better process, which I thought that was over half of the value that Inside Sales brings to us, is the expertise on the process. So we changed our process to get to the results that I'm looking for. They got us live in less than 2 months. And it's been great, right? The results have been better than projected. We're doing 40% more dials. We're getting 80% increase in connects, and we're getting about 30% increase in overall pipeline and sales. So we are ecstatic with the application. I recommend it to everyone I talk to because it's a complementary set of tools that works with Salesforce and our applications in the marketplace. So couldn't be happier.
All right, that was my good friend from Aptus, Kent Percocha. Definitely recommend if you've got contract or price quote configuration needs, Aptus is a go-to partner by all means. So I think we've got enough to get going here. We're going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers. I'll first let Matt introduce himself, and then Matt, I'll take over and go from there. But why don't you take a minute and introduce who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, Gabe, it's great to be here. I'm excited to be talking. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So just a little bit about me so that the audience kind of understands where I've come from and how I've come to kind of create some of the interesting frameworks that I'll be sharing today. But right now I'm founder and Chief Sales Officer at DemoChimp. For the last 8 years or so, I've spent kind of building sales and marketing systems from the ground up for early stage companies. So I think this is really relevant, particularly to this audience, because I've spent a lot of time on the front lines, on the frontier of sales technologies, and just done a lot of A/B testing. So I'm hoping to share some of the things I've learned along the way. Right now, so CSO, we're a fairly small company, DemoChimp is. We've been around for about 2 years, not 2 months, 2 years, about 50 employees, and right now I manage our sales development, our sales closing, and our customer success. So I'll be kind of touching on each of those systems a little bit. But yeah, excited to be here and excited to kind of get some feedback, answer some questions, and really share what I hope to be some insights into managing your tech stack.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, DemoChimp, real cool company, real cool technology, and you're going to hear a little more about that in just a minute. So I'm Gabe Larson. I run our services business over here at InsideSales.com. Been here 3 years. Spent some time before that at Accenture, Goldman Sachs, and a company called Gallup. But lo and behold, I end back up at in the SaaS space here at InsideSales.com, and some real neat stuff in the space of predictive analytics and helping salespeople do their job a little more effectively and efficiently. So as I begin here, I'm going to jump in, and Matt, feel free to comment as we go through. But I did want to make sure everyone was aware of the comment box there on the right-hand side, just to make sure you are aware of it. Please type in where you're coming from, maybe the state or country you're coming from, because I'm going to be asking a couple questions, and I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So I see a couple people out there, Louise and Susan from 3M. We've got Eric from DocuSign, was just up at DocuSign not too long ago. I hope those guys are doing all right. Go ahead and type that in if you can. Yeah, we got Bren from Ohio, the restaurant area. Love it. Thanks, Bren. Yeah, we got, perfect. Mike, Amy, perfect. Looks like most people kind of got that one. San Diego, South Dakota. Probably as cold as it is in South Dakota as it is here in Utah. Perfect. All right, so let's get cracking. Agenda for today is the top 3 items. We want to talk about accelerating sales using our tech stack, and we want to talk about 3 key points here. One is, if it comes to technology, Matt and I are both of the belief that you need to be thinking of it in this process. First and foremost, you got to be thinking about structure, the structure of your sales team. Secondly, you need to be thinking about your process. And then thirdly, you need to be thinking about how you build your tech stack on that process. And I tell you, if you follow that process, you're going to be way more successful with your tech stack in 2016 rather than going this backwards and trying to go technology first. So we want to talk to you about some best practice and then hit the tech stack as we get to the end here. So first and foremost is thinking about a solid sales structure in inside sales. So I'm sure most people have probably heard of this guy right here, Henry Ford. Tell me, type if you can real quick, what's this guy most known for? Henry Ford, what's his go-to? You can type it in the comments there. Yeah, perfect. Taylor, we got the Model T. We got the company called Ford. Yep, we got that one. Yeah, Ryan, perfect, the assembly line. Kelly, the assembly line development. The thing with Henry Ford that he was able to do is he was able to take the assembly line model using the conveyor belt and specialize car or manufacturing production so that we could get to a place where we could produce more at higher quality. My goodness, you guys, you wouldn't believe how sales is starting to fall. We got some real funny comments coming in here. Any color as long as it's black, Todd. You're right. Henry Ford did say that as well. But when it comes to sales, they're following this exact same trend. It's this assembly line sales model, high velocity model, known as different names, specialized sales model. But if you haven't thought about this specialized model, you need to start thinking about it because your tech stack is going to be affected by how your structure is put into place. Now, one of the key studies that we did was we tried to determine how effective it is to actually specialize. And we did a study with a gentleman from MIT. Long and short of it was, if you're going to break out anything in your specialized sales structure, you should start with the appointment setting function and the closing function. People who can break out that function effectively have a 7-point higher close rate. Now, a lot of you are thinking, in fact, I got a question here from Molly that says, why is it more effective? Why isn't it just more? Again, if you're thinking about assembly line model, you're thinking we can actually do more, can't we? But what we proved with this study, you guys, is that you can actually be more effective. If I have an appointment setter just setting appointments, he or she gets really good at it. And if I have somebody just closing deals, they get really good at it. So not only can you do more, but you can do it more effectively. So I wanted to show you how the specialized sales structure is starting to break out. So if you went to a high-tech company, and this isn't the whole picture, but I wanted to at least try to paint it for you. If you go to a fast-growing startup, these are some of the functions and personas that you're seeing in organizations. And it breaks it down into these 4 categories of demand gen, SDR, sales, and client success. So in a demand gen function, boy, this is beginning to play a really big role in the specialized or velocity model. You've got inbound playing a big role, you got list purchasing, you got an events team, and then you have self-sourcing. Then you've got this SDR or sales development function, call it what you want, BDR, ADR. I don't know what you guys call it, Matt, over at Demo Chimp. We call it BDR.
BDM.
Yeah, you got a million names for it, but these are your appointment setters. Notice how specialized those are becoming. You've got the inbound team that just plays the catcher's mitt. You've got the outbound, mid-market team, or the enterprise team, or the social selling team, or the channel team. I don't know if you've seen this, Matt, but I love this specialization of taking your social sellers and putting them actually into one team that is specialized on wasting all of their time on LinkedIn social selling, rather than having everybody waste their time. I hope nobody.
I like that a lot.
That was a little bit of a dig. I'm partially teasing there, but I've seen a couple companies do it. We do it here internally. We have 5 people who are designated social sellers, and they can be extremely effective. If you'd like to learn more about that, hit me up after, because I think there's some fun things there. And then you move to that sales closing function. And boy, that can be specialized in all sorts and fashions. You got product and geo and segment, and you can get as happy and as crazy you want there. Then you've got client success, and there's been some new formulations here. Most importantly is kind of that expander or strategic growth consultant. You're seeing that at multiple companies. They've broken out that client success function and said, hey, you just focus on upselling, growth or expander, and you just focus on retention and client success manager. And that is a specialization that not a lot of people are having at the moment, but you're seeing it come more and more. So my goodness, you guys, you look at this, and 20 years ago, one person was doing all of this, or 30 years ago, one person was doing all of it. Now you've got this assembly line sales model where you're watching the handoffs. Things are moving very fast through the pipeline. But boy, if you don't know this structure and you don't know how you've designed or where you are in your path to specialization, you will not be able to figure out your tech stack. I mean, each function needs different technologies to optimize their pipeline, optimize their motion. So it's very important that you figure out this kind of structure before you start thinking about, hey, what technology am I going to get? Now, Steve says, hey, this is an awesome slide. Thanks, Steve. He says, can we get this deck? Absolutely. We'll make sure we get it to you here at the end of the presentation. Now, Christopher asked a good question. I wanted to throw it out here. Hey, how does this change for big-ticket sales items? And you guys, that is the difference. I was using the term high-velocity sales, or I was using the term assembly line sales. You got to be thinking, and this is a decision you got to make. Are we a transactional model, which is often referred to as a high-velocity assembly line model, or are we a strategic model, which is big-ticket items, Chris, or something that is a little less assembly line sales, if you will? The slide I'm showing you right now, this is definitely more of a assembly line sales model, which would be your SMB or mid-market or corporate enterprise play. As you move into that real strategic, you probably would see this be slightly different, but definitely some of the principles apply. Christopher, if you'd like to talk more about it, you can hit me up after. All right, so a lot of people say, okay, Gabe, I get the vision on specialization. How do I start thinking about getting my company on the path to specialization? And here's kind of my 5-step process. And this, I think, is an important slide. So grab it, take a picture, or we'll send it out to you. If you're at the generalist phase, and that's somebody doing everything, prospecting, qualifying, appointment setting, closing, account managing, your first step is to break out your sales and account manager. That's your very kind of standard hunter and farmer. When is the right time to do that? I typically go with the 20% rule. If you're spending 20% or more of your time doing a different task, such as farming, then it's probably time to start thinking about breaking that out and getting somebody new. Once you've done that, I typically recommend your sales org breaks out into a lead gen and a closer. Again, that's your appointment setting and closing function. Then I think you go real deep on your closer. I think this is where the fun happens with geo and segment and product, and you can get all kind of fancy on your sales closers, and then come back and redo your lead gen team. And that's typically your inbound catcher's mitt, responding to inbound leads, and then also your outbound prospector. Those are your cold callers, people who are kind of reaching out more cold, if you will. Break those teams out and start to segment them. Last but not least, that's when you attack your account managers, and that's usually your growth and your success needs to be split out. Again, you may be in a different place, everybody on their journey, but it's important you, one, start thinking about the specialized model, and then two, it's important because if you're serious about technology, you need to know these functional roles to be able to apply the tech stack appropriately. Good. And again, by all means, we've got some other questions. I'm going to save some of those to the end, but keep throwing questions in there as I'd prefer to make this interactive. Great. Let's move on. Point two here. I wanted to just give a couple samples of different sales structures and how a few of my clients have been thinking about getting a little more optimized. So this is a company down in the Bay Area, more of a partner or indirect sales motion. And I'll let you just kind of look at this here. Again, you've got some demand generation. You've got some people working with a VAR. You've got a client account team that's working with existing accounts. So this one's more of a bigger ticket item, or maybe not as velocity, Christopher, as I was referring to before. Where do you start if you want to get into that kind of velocity or optimized sales structure? And you'll see where I typically recommend to go. So one here is your inbound leads. This company was generating inbound leads and then tossing them to a territory manager who truthfully had so many other tasks to do, they just couldn't respond quick enough and often enough to that inbound demand. So one of my recommendations was to actually break that out. And you'll see that I said, honestly, based on your inbound lead flow, it's worth it to throw in a sales development team to actually call and qualify that inbound demand. That would be trade show leads, web, and chat. And then let that territory manager partner with some of the other orgs so that he doesn't have to waste all of his time sifting through some of the good and the bad of the inbound demand. That's a great function. The sales development function is a great function to get in place. One more example for you here that I wanted to go over. This is a company that does a lot of inbound demand. You can see this is their current sales structure, so they're generating a lot of inbound leads, and then they've got a really manual process where, one, certain leads will come to an individual, and that individual will actually then assign out certain types of leads to a group of people. And then you've got every other lead goes to another person, and she more or less manually assigns out leads to these different teams. As a starting point, again, similar concept, manual process or manual structure there is going to be interesting. So I recommended and said, let's just go ahead and put in a process or system to actually dedupe your leads. Let's put a qualifier or a lead development team. You'll notice I eliminated one of the teams there. But that team will play your primary routing team and qualification team as you go through your sales process. So an easy way to start thinking about a velocity model is to see if you can't get an SDR or qualification team to offload some of the weight of prospecting from your sales team. Good. Okay. So let's move on to point number 2 here. And this is then thinking about, okay, I've got a great sales structure. Now how do I think about a seamless process that I can tackle within that structure? let's go through it. I love this quote. I made it up myself. I've never mapped out my sales process beginning to end. Says everybody. Says every person I've ever talked to. My goodness. This is an actual study by CSO. They say that only 25% of companies, they've been in a place where they actually don't have a documented or adopted sales process. I was surprised at that. I actually, in my experience, it's a lot higher than that. So if you haven't taken the time to document your sales process, here's kind of my quick approach. I like to break the sales process into three areas. You've got the lead acquisition, like how do I get leads? What do I do with those? My cadence, and then how do I qualify them and close them? Nothing too fancy. And I'm a believer, simpler the better on this, you guys. So here's a quick example, and I put this one up here because it's ugly. It's an ugly process. They're not using the right shapes. They're not using the right, process mapping diagram. But honestly, I don't care. What I want is I want to see it on paper and documented so that you can do something like this, a current state to a future state. And notice the difference in complication from that current state to future state. You've got to be able to visualize it and then start cutting out and figuring out how you can optimize that process. I want to see if I can give you a couple examples of how you may do that. So this is an actual company. This is a process map that a company put together and wanted my opinion on it, and I am addicted to process maps. I put these together at home when the kids go to bed. So if you ever want an opinion on your process map, shoot it over. So a company shot this over to me. Again, you see the inbound, kind of how are we getting leads. The middle section is what are we doing with them. And the last section is kind of our qualification and close. I want you to type in, if you were consulting this company, what would be the questions or things that jump out as potentially problematic areas, things that just don't feel right or you may want to ask about. Let's see what we've got here. So Ben, I like that one. So Ben mentioned and said, how much time are they spending on Google and LinkedIn? In fact, Ben, that's one of my favorite because, boy, do some people spend a lot of time on that. We got Carol good one on cadence. So what kind of cadence strategy or structure do they actually have? Good. Keep bringing in some of these comments. Oh, this is an interesting one. It looks like it's John. He's wondering about how leads are being routed and to who they're being routed to. Let's go through a couple of these, and you can tell me your thoughts. Let's focus on the first area here. So I've just highlighted about 5 or 6 areas, but it's a great exercise for you to do on your own process. So let's go through a couple of them. At the bottom, you can see here they're spending about 2 hours a day on LinkedIn or Google. That's their SDR team. Now, guys, there's a study out there by Serious Decisions that 68% of reps' time is spent researching and not calling. It's becoming a huge problem in the industry. SDR reps are spending way too much time researching. You've got to find a way to specialize that. You outsource it. I've got some great companies to do that with. Or you need to hire an intern. You've got to figure out a way to not spend so much time doing that. Data integrity is a big problem. If you're going to be allowing people to self-upload, how do you make sure you have clean data? Prioritization, that's a big topic going into 2016. How do we have prioritized leads if we get inbound and outbound? I love this one, and this is what John was referring to. You'll notice their inbound leads come into HubSpot, and then they go to their client account executives. So they actually bypass their SDR team and send their inbound leads right to their closers. I'm like 0 for 12 on this, you guys. The reason it doesn't work is these client account execs, they've got other stuff going on, and so they don't respond as immediate as possible. So I would definitely have you watch if you're bypassing your SDR team to your closing team. Be careful of that. Let's go to the middle section. Um, and I got Tim here mentioning a good one. He talks about, yeah, it looks like he's kind of hitting on the cadence thing as well. I think cadence is going to be a big thing in 2016. How are we in a structured way if we don't get somebody following up with them so that we get enough touches to really get the value out of our marketing and lead gen efforts? So a couple things to be thinking about here is you can see at the bottom where it says Home tab or Reports. One of the things we're finding here a lot is where reps are actually navigating to be able to follow up with people. So are they going to their Home tab? Are they going to their Leads tab? Are they going to their Reports tab? They're going to so many different tabs in the CRM that they're often getting lost in basically, how should I prioritize? I got all these different places where I can go to find stuff. Centralize it on one if you can. There's some great tools you can use if you don't get people on the phone around emails and texting and voicemailing. We got David here talking about nurturing. Yeah, a lot of people say they nurture if they don't get someone on the phone or they've called them 3 times and they're going to now nurture them. I don't feel like a lot of people do it really well. You've got to have good lead statuses set up so that you can actually send them back to marketing and get nurtured. I appreciate that one, David. I think it's a good one. And then lastly, here's a couple things I thought were interesting. One is if you've got an SDR team, a lot of unstructured qualification, people asking just random questions as part of your qualification process. I think you can tighten that a lot. When you actually hand off appointments to a closing team, we're finding that immediacy is super duper important. 3 days is kind of the magic number. We're seeing a huge drop-off in hold rates after 3 days. And so that's something you may want to consider. And then lastly on this, now if you've got an SDR team and the appointment doesn't hold, how are you making sure that gets back and that appointment is reset or rescheduled? Sometimes that'll slip through the cracks. An appointment isn't held or it's not accepted. It can just get messy. So you've got to watch those handoffs in your current process. So that's a little bit of an exercise. As you think about your own process, I'd probably say you want to be thinking about these 5 steps. So number 1, know your functional areas like we talked about. Number 2, map that current state process. Number 3, you've got to find the strengths and weaknesses and see if you can't change them. Number 4, put together that future state. Number 5, make sure you revisit it often enough so that you don't see process decay actually happen. So really important, you guys, structure and process. Now let's get into some of the technology. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt to dive into some of these key points and key areas.
Thanks, Gabe. I love what you were talking about. Sometimes I get jealous that you get to spend so much time working with clients on process maps. That's very cool stuff. Okay, so tech stacks. So, it's interesting talking to a lot of my peers and, just people in the sales world and account executives especially, that when they talk about managing their tech stacks, it's just kind of they don't see a clear process and they don't have a lot of confidence in it. And there's really kind of one main question that
Matt, did we lose you? You still there? Yeah, Philippe, we're getting no audio as well from Matt. Can everybody hear me? Did Matt just get cut off? Are you hearing me? This is Gabe speaking. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and it looks like Sarah from Iron Mountain. Yeah, no, Matt. Matt must have got caught off. Matt, maybe if you're listening, if you could dial back in, and I'm going to go ahead and continue. He must have got cut off. I apologize because he's a way more interesting speaker than I am. But let's continue, and he'll jump back on. So the thing Matt was just touching on is why, when it comes to your tech stack, man, as you look at the whole industry, it gets really crazy. Where do you even start? I love this slide.
Hey, Gabe, I'm back.
Good, Matt. I was going to try to just fake it until I made it, but why don't you pick back off? Apologize that we got you cut off there.
No, yeah, sorry about the delay, everybody. Gabe, you were doing awesome. I'll just sit back and you can go if you want.
Yeah, why don't you continue?
Okay, so yeah, it's extremely overwhelming, and the most common question is really, hey, where do I start? So one of the things, last thing I wanted to point out was just that we're actually writing a 6-part blog that goes really deep on the different steps of this process for managing a tech stack. So we'll kind of give you details about how to get that later. But yes, it's incredibly overwhelming, and knowing where to start. What I hear from a lot of people is, hey, it feels really risky to constantly be testing new tools, or it feels like a big drain on our resources. But realistically, if you think about technology as a competitive advantage, and look at it through that lens, it actually becomes a lot more risky and a lot more expensive not to manage your tech stack on purpose. Well, I think what's happening to so many people is that we're being sold a tech stack, right? We're buying from whatever companies are the best at selling to us rather than managing our tech stack on purpose. So I hope that from today's, that I give you a little bit of insight into how to do that and kind of what it takes. So let's jump right into this, the example tech stack. Please add some comments or submit a question about, maybe why I left certain things out in this example, or, if you have questions about any individual thing here. But let me get right into it. I'll just talk through each of these different pieces of kind of a foundational tech stack and why they're important. Some of this might be a little bit of review, but I'll go through it quickly, and then we can get into the process, the steps to managing a tech stack from my experience over the years. So starting, of course, the initial core piece to every tech stack should be a CRM. I have Salesforce here because for a number of reasons, but really the reason that this is so critical, and I think everybody knows this, but it's just really to manage your customer database, to leverage workflows, integrate all of your tools really, so that you have all your data housed in one place. I'll move on from that. I think that's a given. The next, though, that's maybe not so obvious, just because it's only a few years old, but having a home-based dashboard where all of your analytics can flow into it. So Domo is a great example of this, but maybe the most important reason for having a dashboard where all of your data flows into it is so that you can constantly be A/B testing in everything that you're doing. We talked about, Gabe talked about process maps. Well, every single process that you're looking at is only going to last. It has a shelf life, right? Eventually, your competition is going to develop a better process. And so if you're not constantly innovating on the different legs of your process or the different processes inside the larger system, your competition is going to overtake you. So really important that you're A/B testing and having a tool like Domo to have all that data in real time and be managing or measuring the outcomes of your different A/B tests is really critical. So the next one is a data provider. So at some point, nearly every lead that you have should be appended or bought, right? You can't, without high quality data, you can't properly segment, you can't analyze, do proper win-loss analysis. Routing leads becomes very difficult. Gabe talked about specialization. If you don't have high enough quality data, it becomes difficult to specialize because of the lead routing challenges that you run into. Leads might end up with the wrong people. So, yeah, data is really critical. Another key point to picking a data provider is the quality of data initially for your outbound teams. I found that if you can find a data provider that has better direct dial phone numbers, that can significantly increase the production per rep on your outbound teams. So, Gabe, feel free to jump in if you want to talk about it. Add why you think any of these are important or foundational. But especially with this communication, inside sales is a fantastic tool for this. But communication may be as critical as the CRM because of the efficiencies and learning, right? The insights that you can gain in dialing and email and social communication. Gabe, can I ask you, why do you think that communication should be a core piece of any tech stack?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like, Matt, I was just going to jump in, is that, guys, this aligns with kind of the process, right? So, start to finish, once you see your process, you should probably be thinking of, okay, top of funnel, where am I getting my leads? Okay, I'm going to maybe need a provider for that. Okay, how am I going to be reaching out to my leads in an effective manner? You've got to have email tracking. You've got to be able to have an efficient way to call people and have a cadence designed around that. Again, you're going to be hearing the word cadence come up a lot in 2016. The foundation of cadence is communication. Phone isn't good enough anymore. You've got to be using text and email and social tools and round those into a mixed campaign structure. So, I mean, to me, man, obviously, I mean, I work for InsideSales.com, but it definitely starts and stops sometimes with communication. But then as you move down the sales process, okay, we've now got them on the phone, how do we make sure we get them further down the pipeline? Okay, how do we close them? How do we manage client success? At each step in your process, you should be evaluating different stack providers.
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. Absolutely. I think demo automation is an interesting one. That's what DemoChimp does. And really, the reason for that, the reason why I believe this is core is really that live demos are extremely effective, but expecting a prospect to effectively regurgitate what they heard on a live demo to convince all the other stakeholders is kind of bananas. It's crazy, right? That you play that telephone game and bet whether or not your sale closes on their ability to do that. So a good demo automation tool is key because it educates all the stakeholders so that they can make a faster and more confident purchase decision. Training and coaching is absolutely critical. In my opinion, this is maybe one of the most, where most companies have the most to gain. Assuming that you have these other things. This is kind of, a lot of people get through these, training and coaching is kind of done the old-fashioned way. But there's some really awesome technology that's starting to come out to help with this. Essentially what these tools would do is record your calls. I know Inside Sales offers some of this functionality. Record your calls and then give your executives or your sales managers the ability to listen to calls and coach them in the context of the call, so that they're not having to sit down for a full day with a single rep to do coaching and hope that, right. I mean, there's so much time is wasted just sitting and waiting for the right call and the right coaching opportunity. So these tools are critical.
One thing, Matt, and this is just a side note, I mean, this industry, training and coaching, no offense if anybody does that as a profession, but boy, is it on the cusp of disruption. I mean, the days of attending a one-day training program, in a different state and then flying home and forgetting everything and going back to your usual, those days I think are disappearing. You're going to get more real-time coaching using predictive analytics, voice recognition software, recording and monitoring capabilities. I mean, it's coming pretty fast, and there's some real neat stuff you're going to see in probably 2016, 2017 around this.
Yeah, very exciting. And then customer success, absolutely critical. I think SaaS companies are well aware of how important customer success is because our business model is entirely based on retention and expansion, right? Keeping churn as low as possible. For non-SaaS companies, they maybe don't pay as much attention to this, but one of the most interesting insights that's come out recently was from a consulting firm, CEB, the Chief Executive Board, if you're familiar with them. They wrote the Challenger sale. And they actually found out that the biggest correlation, the highest correlated activity to a renewal, or a customer renewing a contract with you, was actually the sales experience, even over the actual ROI on the investment. So customer, if you're not investing in customer success, that's absolutely an area that should get your attention in 2016, especially for your tech stack. So we've kind of given you an example of what an initial tech stack could be. I've left out some pretty important ones, as you've noticed. Things like gamification, CPQ, quoting, proposals, things like that. But that's kind of, as a core. So
I'd love to, Matt, just real quick, I'd love to hear from the group, as you kind of then think about a tech stack process here. Guys, chime in if you can on your comment board here. What would you put in your optimal tech stack? I'd love to hear some of the things, as Matt said, he kind of hit some core elements. What are things that are on your mind that you've been thinking about, other elements in your tech stack that you feel like are pretty fundamental or important? And we can dive into that, Matt, maybe at the end. But I want to maybe continue based on time, and we can hash that out a little bit later.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'd love to give some feedback or some specific information about tech stack, when to buy what, things like that. So while you're doing that, thinking about a process to manage your tech stack. Now, again, this is about managing your tech stack on purpose, and not just saying, hey, we're hitting our numbers, everything is great. Actually thinking, asking yourself the question regularly, how can we use the latest technology as a competitive advantage? And so this is a pretty basic process, and again, I'm going to go really deep on these in a blog series. So if you find that I leave you hanging, I'll be sending out that information so you can get it in the next in the near future. But let's go through it one by one. So the first thing that really has to be done is mapping it out. Gabe went into great detail about this, and it's absolutely critical. This fuzzy, awful picture is a screenshot of our sales process. So these blue inputs are what's coming in from marketing. It's going into our sales development team, etc. I think the key here is that you have no holes in your process. That's kind of goal number one, right? When you're just getting this down on paper, like Gabe was talking about, just design it so that there are no holes, so that you don't have a way for a lead to just go into the abyss and not be nurtured. And then once you've kind of established that, then you can really get into optimizing each of the different stages of it using technology. And just using better processes and strategies. So that's step number one, right? Map it out. The next is taking that map and just making kind of a brain dump, but just getting a list of all the different key activities and the associated metrics with those. So for the example stack that I showed, managing customer records was a key activity. Measuring everything, creating and appending lists, calling, emailing, and using social, demoing stakeholder education, coaching, managing adoption and implementation. And then there are metrics that are associated with those, right? What you're actually doing here in making these lists is you're giving yourself a structured way to say, what should I be searching for? Because that's the next step in the process. I know this seems very simple and completely obvious, but it's when you sit down and actually do it, the results aren't always as intuitive as, if I were just to ask you, hey, what tech do you think you should buy right now that you don't already have? So I really encourage you to try this. I've seen a lot of companies have success by just taking a structured approach like this. So the next is finding the technology. The obvious one is Google. Use those keywords, both the activities and the metrics, to do some Google searching and find out who's talking about this. The beautiful thing, and Gabe, you mentioned earlier that the training and coaching industry might be ripe for disruption. Excuse me. This is another reason for it, right? Companies like Inside Sales, like us, we're publishing content constantly, trying to educate people, because that's how we get your interest. So if you go and you're searching for you're using the right phrases for the key activities that you need that are part of your processes, or the key metrics that are part of your processes, you're going to find the people that are talking about it are likely going to be the companies who solve that problem. And then don't underestimate your network. So go to LinkedIn and just ask for somebody to give you some advice. What solutions has anybody found that solve this, or automate this activity, or improve this metric, or whatever? So pretty basic, but really powerful when you engage in this and manage your tech stack on purpose. So the next thing is really prioritizing and buying. It gets kind of interesting here. So one of the difficult things that happens when you have it listed out, you have kind of a list of technologies that you could potentially buy. There are a lot of shiny new toys, right, that will be right in front of you. All of the technology looks awesome. It can all deliver amazing results, right? This is what you're being told, and a lot of it is real. And you want all the competitive advantages you can get, so trying to figure out which tech to buy can be really challenging. So what I would say is kind of the intuitive thing. Think about which process is either the most detrimental to your process, or which activity or metric will have the biggest impact on the goal that you're trying to reach, and buy that first. It's a lot easier said than done because of the shiny new toy problem and the cool technologies. And one company might have a really sexy brand, but the company that's going to have the biggest impact on your growth may not. So it's difficult to compare those things, but be disciplined about it, and you'll have the best results. So during the demo, the next thing is the click level walkthrough. This is something that people rarely do, right? They'll get on and they're listening to a demo from a sales rep, and they're getting the high level. They talk through the process just off the top of their heads, but they don't get down to the click level and say, is this going to fit into our current process? There's some really interesting research about task switching and how that can affect productivity, and even the process decay, right? That happens when you have too many tools going on at once. Gabe, do you have any thoughts about that? I know process decay is something that you've studied quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm addicted to the process stuff, but I think, like you said, if you don't approach this the right way and keep kind of looking at your process and how tools fit into that, you're going to run into a place where all these tools start to overlap, because the buzz in the industry is platform, right? So everybody's going to start offering more and more of the same functionalities. And if you don't know your truth, you don't know what you need, then I think from a process standpoint, where your gaps are, then you're just going to start to see, I've got all these tools and I don't know where they fit, and I don't know that they overlap, and I start to see a lot of deficiencies and potentially decay because of that kind of confusion.
Yeah, this is a really critical step of asking the hard questions. And if you don't understand something, you don't want to. A lot of times, you don't want to be on that demo anyway. But forcing yourself to really dig into the click level issues is right. The next thing. Yeah, the next thing that has to be considered is the effect on the customer experience. Again, this goes back to the point that the highest correlated activity to renewals is actually the sales experience. And so really pay attention to whatever your technology you're buying and how it affects that. When you're talking about contracts, if you don't have a procurement office, I think most of the companies here do, but just try to get contracts that fit into a tech stack testing cycle. So this actually fits in with the pilot versus phases question. If you're trying to test a lot of tools or add tools to your tech stack, there's one camp that says, hey, you should pilot everything. Don't ever buy big. And then there's another camp that says, well, if you don't commit to a tool, the rollout's not going to be effective. You're not going to put enough resources behind it. So in my experience, it's actually, there's a pretty clear division of when you should do a pilot and when you should roll out in phases or buy licenses for your whole team or something like that. And the division is really about it's about the reputation and how well you can trust that company. If you know that you need a CRM and there's a startup CRM that looks awesome, and then there's Salesforce over here, if you want to try the startup, definitely pilot it. Don't buy that for everybody, right? But if you're buying Salesforce, buy as many licenses as you can so that you can take advantage of bulk discounts and things like that. So there is a time to pilot, and I believe that it is when you're buying from a startup. If you're rolling out in phases, putting the right resources behind it, everything that you need to effectively manage that implementation, do that with the larger companies that you could really commit to for a couple of years. Gabe, we've talked quite a bit about this. What do you think? Is that on?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's bought in the sales acceleration space has played this game of pilot or not pilot. And so sometimes I think, in addition to what you said, Matt, is I would probably go to how sophisticated of a product it is and how much change is going to be required to make it successful. If you want an email tool, sure, go ahead and download the free version and maybe do that for do the pilot and check it out and play with it. When it comes to maybe predictive analytics, and you just can't do that without actually putting a little bit of your shoulder behind the wheel. You got to put some resources and some flavor behind that. And so I typically say on more sophisticated or change management stuff that requires change management, pilots don't often get you the results you want because you don't have the executive buy-in and the committee and the governance structure. So if we're talking about a lot of change, maybe go for phases. If you just want to try kind of a quick and dirty product, I think the pilot. So there's different use cases for each, for sure.
Yeah, good points. So we're wrapping up at 1 o'clock. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, we want some. Okay, so we'll be burn through the rest of this, and then again, we'll go really deep on this in blog posts later. But so you talked about the change management as a core factor of how much change management is required should influence your decision to pilot or put the resources behind it that need to be. So some of the interesting things I think, or the most important part about implementation is A/B testing. I can't tell you how many clients we work with, even at DemoChimp, where they buy and then they roll it out, and we ask them, hey, how would you define success, right? How would you define a successful implementation? What metrics are you planning on this tool affecting? And they don't have a good answer for it. They say things like, oh, we just know that our customers would really enjoy an interactive, personalized video demo presentation, and so we bought it. I'm glad that they're buying, but it's not good for us or our clients, right, if baseline metrics aren't being captured and measured against. So A/B testing is critical, right? I would never buy a tool, I would never implement a tool without establishing baseline metrics, setting targets, measuring the actual, and so that you have the data that you need to make decisions on your purchase and evaluate that. The change management is a critical piece. You need early and consistent communication. Ironing out the kinks early is really critical. Not letting things fester. Making the changes really desirable and putting it in the context of their individual results that those users are going to get. so that you get people behind the change that you're trying to manage. And then the last thing that I'll say is just some general pitfalls, right? As you're evaluating contracts and deciding what to buy, again, avoid the kind of shiny toy draw in deciding when to roll out what tools. One major pitfall is people kind of not knowing what they're agreeing to or paying more than they should. They don't understand some of the hidden costs or the incremental charges. Another major pitfall that I've seen is not going deep enough on integrations and really understanding those before you commit to a new tool. And lastly would be kind of understanding exit costs. Hey, what if this tool doesn't work? What does it cost me to get out of it? So that's really it. That's the 6-step process, or step number 6 is repeat, of course. So what it really comes down to is have a dedicated team, use a process to pick what tech to buy, A/B test that tech in a really diligent way, and then do it again. And just be aggressive about going out, finding new tech, getting it into your systems, and seeing if it thrives or if it fails. So, Gabe, that's what I've got.
That's
I forgot about this.
That's perfect, Matt. Well, Matt, there's one question out there, and maybe you can dovetail into this. They actually asked, what are some of your favorite tools that you use at DemoChimp? Maybe you could kind of parlay that into what you were going to mention right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So very quickly, when we started, right, the quotas from kind of the last companies and kind of standard quotas that I've seen, an outbound rep should do about 12 TQOs a month. Well, because we've been so diligent about building our tech stack, our reps are actually held to 25 TQOs per month, TQO being a total qualified opportunity. Our inbound reps, they used to be held to 20, now they're held to 50. The production per rep has been astounding, and it's an amazing competitive advantage for us, even though we actually don't have a direct competitor yet. That's probably factoring into some of these numbers, but still, the production per rep is phenomenal. Our SMB account executives are held to 75,000 per rep per month, up from 30,000. And this is really, I genuinely attribute this to being extremely diligent about managing and analyzing our processes, like Gabe's talked about, and then getting the right technology into the right pieces of our processes, and being able to hit these numbers. So,
perfect.
Yeah. So you asked what?
Those are some big numbers. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Well, somebody asked what technology. I'm a big fan of Salesforce. I'm actually a big fan of inside sales, especially because of all the different tools that they're incorporating into a singular platform. I think it's absolutely fantastic and really avoids a lot of the switching costs, process decay, and other challenges that can happen when you're building out a point solution tech stack. So those are two that I would recommend. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know those are the obvious ones, but.
Yeah. So, guys, we're to the end here. There's a couple minutes. I tried to answer as many questions as I could on chat, but there's a couple other questions. And Matt, you just hit on one. It's kind of this point solution problem. We've got someone out there. It looks like James, who said, "Hey, there's so many vendors and they offer a lot of the same functionality. I'm just struggling figuring out how to sift through all of it." And the one thing I would say to that, James, is you are going to see a lot of consolidation in the industry and the concept of platform and getting away from point solutions. I had one sales leader say, "Hey, I've got 17 different vendors. It's just too much." And so I realize it's tough, but it's coming, and I think soon enough you'll have a full platform in the sales acceleration space. Matt, what would you say to someone who says, "Hey, so many vendors offering some of the same stuff. How do I figure out how to go where and where to go with who?"
That's a really good question. I definitely would go to my peer network. There's no substitute for user experience, somebody that's going to give you good, honest feedback. That's
the
first place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how you're differentiating. I think a lot of these tech stack vendors is, are they really worth their weight in gold? And word of mouth is a pretty big deal, reputation. Let's maybe hit one more
Hmm.
question. We had a couple people bring up when we said, "Hey, what other tech stack offerings are you considering?" We had one person bring up hiring. Hiring's a big problem, and how do we solve that and technology around that? And then around the predictive scoring and predictive analytics space, we had some other
Hmm.
questions around. And so, any quick thoughts, Matt, on playing in those two areas? I know we're kind of end of time here, but quick thoughts on recommendations there. Well, you know what?
Yeah. So
Matt, I
for
better jump in before and say,
okay.
inside sales can provide some both on the predictive analytics as well as the hiring stack. I probably shouldn't let you throw out too many ideas, Matt, because we've got some great stuff here. We've got some great stuff here in house. But depending on what you're looking for in the predictive world, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who do lead scoring and opportunity scoring, and there's predictive gamifications coming down the pipe. So probably something to dive in deeper there. And if you'd like to hit us up after, either Matt or I would be happy to answer those questions. So, Matt, I'd love to answer some more questions, but dang it, we're out of time. So, any closing thoughts, Matt, before we jump off?
Yeah, I guess I just want to say if you're not making time to, you really have to get into an intense flow to do good innovative work around your processes and managing your tech stack. So I would say set apart a whole day, get into the flow, work it out. You'll probably get through it a lot faster than you think. And the competitive advantages that you can have are astounding. They can
Great.
be.
No, love it. I don't think I have much to add to that. I would just say, guys, please do add Matt and I on LinkedIn or get us on Twitter. We're always open for a conversation. This is one of our favorite topics. Also, just as a reminder, we will be getting you tomorrow a link to this webinar, and there are some free downloads available here in the webinar platform. So thanks so much, Matt. I know we're coming up on the Christmas season, so appreciate you taking the time away from your busy schedule, and thank you everybody for joining, and have a fantastic day.